Joining me live is Professor Ian Hickie, psychiatrist and co-director at the Brain and Mind Centre. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. Yes, we're certainly hearing so many arrests, the start of perhaps the silly season for people calling it that. But what do we need to do? There's debate over pill testing, more education. What needs to be done in your opinion?
Well, the main thing is actually highlighting the risks associated with this degree of drug taking, as alongside with alcohol taking, particularly in the weather conditions we're having. So many young people assume there's no real risk, and they also assume there's no real risk from the drug taking that they're exposed to. So one of the good things about pill testing is people finding out something of what they're actually taking. Many people think they know what they've got access to, but really they don't have any idea. And we've seen overseas, particularly with the fentanyl crisis and elsewhere, the extent to which many compounds that people are taking are not what they think they are, and they've got no idea of the real risk they're at. So I think rather than putting the emphasis on policing, we've got to put the emphasis on better information, younger people being better informed, and being really serious about the risks that young people in particular are really taking in these circumstances.
And I spoke to Mark Maury earlier today, and we were sort of talking about the same situation and education. And he wasn't claiming that he was an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but he was saying maybe we need to start educating our youth even at a younger age.
Well, we do, unfortunately. Pill taking in particular has now become very common amongst young Australians, and particularly in association with things like music festivals and clubbing and other sets of areas. So while we've had a great deal of emphasis in the past on alcohol and cannabis and other drugs and problems that may be associated for young people, the real risks associated here are quite substantive and have been growing progressively. So I think education's part of it, and really keeping safe and really knowing what is actually taking place. The whole problem with the unregulated drug market, of course, is that people don't know what they're buying. They don't really know what they're taking. They're just taking on trust, can you believe it, from people they bought the stuff from to think it's okay. So we've got to challenge some of the myths that there are no real dangers associated with this kind of behaviour. And we've got to do what we can to minimise those risks. Good education, good ideas about what people need to do to be hydrated, how to take care of friends. And I think this is where pill testing does have a role, really revealing what people are being exposed to and the real risks associated with that, and the way it is mixed with alcohol, mixed with being dehydrated, and other sets of problems that can lead, as we've seen just tragically this weekend, to premature deaths.
Yeah, and I guess that debate on pill testing is one. I think hearing a lot of people say, oh, if you go to somebody who tests it and they say, oh, it hasn't got X, Y and Z in it, you're off to go. But I have heard other people say, no, that's not the case. They do educate you and say no drug is good.
That's right. So I think pill testing people see as the sort of green light. In fact, what most of the research shows is it causes people to be cautious, and it encourages young people to go and find out what exactly they're taking and the risks that are associated with taking it, and particularly mixing it then with other substances, alcohol, or in situations where you can be dehydrated, when the heat that we're currently experiencing, and what the real risks are. So when it occurs within a broader educational environment, I think it has much more to offer than just strict policing. And strict policing runs the risk that people just ingest the substances anyway to avoid detection, and actually may put themselves at substantively increased risk.
From a brain point of view, Professor, are there certain types of brain that perhaps have more impulse control issues that, they know it's wrong, but they need to get that high, that dopamine, or is it about learning about our own brains and going, okay, well, I have a tendency to have these risk-taking behaviours. What do you say to that?
Well, risk-taking is common amongst young people. So as brains develop and people get socialised and they go out and they enjoy themselves, they do take risks. So I think, as with the rest of much of what we do in health, the issue is about harm reduction. What can we do to minimise that risk during these critical developmental phases? So it's a real problem when young people want to go out and enjoy themselves, they want to do things, they do tend to take risks. How can we collectively manage those risks and encourage people to behave responsibly? In fact, what we've seen with young people is the more we provide education about binge drinking, about cannabis, about other drug takings, in fact, it's had an effect on the risks that young people are prepared to take. So we've seen improvements in a number of those other areas, but the pill-taking situation at the moment is one where people perceive there to be low risk, particularly low brain risk. Oh, everything will be fine tomorrow, nothing can really go wrong, when in fact a lot can go wrong, and as we've seen tragically, can result even in death.
Your new book out next week, The Devil You Knew, the myths around depression and why your best days are ahead of you. What are the stats on depression, and why are our best days ahead of us if people are suffering from depression?
Well, one of the good things is, and we should continue to reinforce, that if you detect depression early and you treat it effectively, then you can move on. In the past, for people my age, and particularly for men my age, they didn't get help. They indulged in alcohol and other drugs. They avoided care, with disastrous effects on their marriage, on their careers, on their lives, and with the belief that nothing really could be done. And although we've talked about these things for a long time, the book is all about more detailed knowledge. How do you work out about yourself where you're most vulnerable and what you most need to do, whether it's regulate your body clock, whether it's get further information, whether it's exercise better, whether it's sleep better, whether it's get good access to effective care. And one of the things to say is good care makes a difference. And we have struggled in Australia to provide good care to enough people. So we have to keep pressure on governments and others to expand the health system. But along the way, people need to know what to ask. And people who accompany parents, others, spouses, children, go with people who need care to those care systems and ask the right questions. So the book's full of questions to ask your doctor, your psychologist, anyone else about what is best care and is it being provided to the person you really care about.
Professor Ian Hickie, thank you so much for your time and expertise.
Thank you so much, Janie, for your interest.